And we'll start with a roll call and termination of quorum.
Matthew Lehane,
Here.
Colin Yellow,
Here.
Bailey Thompson,
Here.
Hussam Amin,
Here.
Chris Clark, Kathy Coffey, Adam Garrett, Melody Fowler,
Here.
Amy Garbarini, Kate Gibson,
Here.
Leon Hughes, Daniel Koenig, Cassie Lord,
Here.
Will Montgomery,
Here.
Philip Perea,
But here. Sorry,
Ron White.
Here. I put my name.
All right, Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll move on to approval of the August 3rd, 2026 TAC agenda. Do I have any discussion or motion?
Motion to.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
So one question, do you want to talk bylaws, Ian?
Sure. I'll just do it on the staff report.
Okay.
Any data anything to the then? Okay. All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Move on to public comment. Comments and questions from members of the public are welcome at this time. Staff will also read comments submitted by the public prior to the meeting. Is there anyone in the room who wishes to make a public comment?
Just kidding.
Anyone online?
Anybody online? Okay, no one? All right, and nothing to read out? Okay, perfect. All right, we'll
Great.
close the public comment period and move on to the consent agenda, which is approval of the June 1 TAC meeting minutes, June 22nd TAC meeting minutes, and resolution 2705 for updates to CMAC, CR, and STBG.
Can I just ask one question? Just what's the difference between the regional funding item under 5C and then I guess the one staff report?
The one at the end is actually the full list with all the amendments included. So it's going to be the full updated list, as well as I'll get to it for the least the numbers at the end, and I'll make comment.
Sounds great. No concerns.
All right, do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
Motion to approve?
All right, do I have a second? Yep.
On the resolution 2705, it doesn't say anywhere in the resolution itself what's being done. I know that there's an attachment, but just a comment for the future that it might be helpful.
Pull up the resolution.
to be more.
I'm assuming the resolution states its modifications
Just-
and then the attachment.
Don't move it again. Amended allocations. So it's to adopt the amended allocations.
There's an attachment which shows here's group findings crossed out. As someone who's looked at a lot of old resolutions and tried to piece together what's happened in the past, I think it may be helpful to say in the resolution
Say what?
that you're removing Garrison Road widening and moving it to the balance entry or.
Actually, it's being swapped in with the Garrison Road
Targeted.
targeted improvements because there's the scope change going from A through lane widening. Because basically was have to remove the old project and add the new project because we're changing kind of the treatments.
Well, if you
It's maintaining its old UPC number. So as well as swapping the types of funding because CMAC would not be applicable to.
So the first top line Garrisonville is replaced by the fourth line Garrisonville. It's
Yeah, so
on
I guess
one-
just to note, maybe you guys can talk about this a little bit more offline, but I guess, John, one thing that might help in the future is putting them next to each other on the spreadsheet. Just so people know it's the next project, but I hear what you're all saying now. All right, we'll move on. I saw a motion from Paul and a second from Philip. We will, I guess, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We move on to tip amendments and modifications. We have resolution 2701 for an update to the FredX project. I think it's just backfilling some funding for it. And then resolution 2703 for VRE. Any comments, John?
No, unless VDOT has any additional comment from the FedEx. So this is an interesting item where the currently constructed and completed FedEx project for county was not in our 24-27 TIP. They're having to move money around. And as a result, we are actually having to add it back into the TIP. Although this is not in relationship to my knowledge as far as any other FredEx development. So this is actually backfilling an existing project and they are adding funds into FY26 as a result.
The old project,
Yes, correct.
and there appears to be a funding shortfall to close it down.
Any further discussion or comments on this? If not, I'll take a.
No, I was
Wayne?
just acknowledging we do actually have VDOT in the room. I thought we didn't.
All right, any further discussion?
A motion to approve?
Okay, I have a motion from Paul. Do I have a second? I have a second, Philip. All right, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Carries. All right, move on to action and discussion items. We'll start with item 7A, update on federal transportation reauthorization bill. Mr. Ian Hollis, I believe this item was questioned by Paul.
Yeah, so this, I'm going to go through it real quick. There's just an update. I gave an update to the policy committee and we've been watching it. So just for your information, nothing we have to do about this. Next slide. Okay, so we're monitoring the bill. The House released its markup bill and the committee voted to send it to the full House for approval. It retains additional funding for MPOs and reduces the for PL, it increases the amount, you'll see the percentages coming, and it reduces the match from 20% to 10%. If it's approved in that form, the state of Virginia will have to decide whether it's going to, again, split the 10% match 50-50, so that actually we only need 5% match from localities rather than 10%, which we need now. Or alternatively, if they're going to keep their portion and the localities still have to pay the 10%, I don't know. It seems like the intention of the bill is to reduce the match for localities to pay, but we'll find that out. It increases CMAQ and STBG funding, particularly STBG funding, which, as you know, is very desirable funding because it's very flexible. So that's good news. It eliminates the carbon reduction program funding that's gone. There's new bridge program funding, and it channels more funding to the local level for allocation rather than the state level. So there is a little bit of a shift in the way that the funding is prioritized.
So Ian, basically with the last point, would that include like MPOs or would that just be going directly to localities?
So that's just a general statement. In the bill, it's got lots of specific proposals. So, you know, you have the states will have to consult rural localities before allocating certain funds. They're taking some funds which were allocated to the state and they're giving it to MPOs to allocate, which is how they increase the carbon reduction and the SDGB funding, because it's not a lot of additional total funding. The House is trying to keep the allocation below 600 billion. So it's really like 580, 590 billion. And so it's really reallocating funding more than increasing the total by a huge amount. There is an increase, but it's not huge.
So Ian, with that, I guess one thing I'd be interested that you guys maybe you could just pull together information just to have it if it comes up. But how much money do we have in the carbon reduction program in the region? And then what is the increase in the STBG program? Is the increase in STBG cancel out the reduction, or are we going to have a reduction in funding?
Some of that is in the next slides.
Okay.
We don't, the amount that is in the CR program you just need to go to the website and click on the
they get rid
CMAQ
of,
list.
if they get rid of the CR program, that means that FY 28, 29, 30 funding that we currently have will not exist.
I'm not sure about that because that funding's already allocated, but we'll see.
Yeah, because the bill is only current bills is what FY 22 through FY 26.
Okay, let me finish the presentation and then ask these same questions because you'll see some of them are answered in the slides. Next slide. Okay, so that's where we are in the process, except that the House bill is not still stuck in the Ways and Means Committee. It's been sent to the House for a full vote. But basically we're stuck there. The Senate has not made any progress, which is why I don't want to get overly focused on the detail yet, because they're probably going to change it. Next slide. So The House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure voted to advance the bill 61 votes to 2 after the 15-hour markup process. Amendments that they added, they've added the Railway Safety Act to the bill. They have created a pilot program to allow heavier trucks. You'll remember, those of you who attended the policy committee, there was or watched it online, there was a presentation on allowing heavier trucks on our roads. And the gentleman that made the presentation was not in favor of that because of the damage to the roads, and the cost to repair them will fall on whoever owns the roads. And so that will be a cash suck over time as those heavier trucks damage the roads. So what they've done is allowed a pilot project. States have to opt in. In other words, you're not going to be forced to have the heavier trucks. You're allowed to allow them to operate, and then the pilot project will determine whether it's problematic. Locally owned bridges, there's a set aside. However, one of the things that I sort of would like to comment about this particular set aside is that very few outside of big cities, very few of the bridges are owned locally. They're usually owned by the state, right? So I'm not sure how many locally owned bridges there are. For example, in a city like Chicago, I'm assuming they own all those bridges over the river because it's right in the dead center of town. But for most places, other than those really big cities, I'm assuming like in the state of Virginia, VDOT owns the bridges, right? I'm not, no? You own some?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a set aside for you, you'll be pleased to know, to repair and maintain those locally owned bridges.
So Spotsylvania actually owns one as well.
Really?
Over
There you go.
it's kind of like a strange situation.
We own,
The bridge is closed.
Wow.
We wouldn't want to use it.
Look, how wrong can I be?
We're trying to.
Well, okay, Stafford doesn't own any, not that I'm aware of.
How wrong can I be? There you go. So there's money in the bill for those locally owned bridges. And I must say they've ramped up the funding for bridges. The big word in this whole bill is all about bridges. So if you have bridges or you want bridges, now's the time to focus on it because there's everything about bridges in this bill. But anyway, the House has voted to advance it. The committees have voted to advance it to the full House. The full House now has the bill. They have a text. Next slide. So bridge formula funding jumps from 5.5 billion to 9 billion per year, which includes the 25% set aside for locally owned bridges. There you go, Farm. So 25% of the 9 billion is going to be allocated to locally owned bridges, and that's brand new. So that's good news for people who own bridges locally. STGB, there you go, Matthew, grows from 28.74% of the Highway Trust Fund funding to 31%. Not a massive increase, but it is an increase. The problem that you have to bear in mind is that that fund is going to be bankrupt on about the 1st of July next year, currently. So unless they find additional funding, it's going to be 31% of nothing. The thing that's going to be bankrupt first, the transit fund portion of that, it's going to be bankrupt really soon. The overall Highway Trust Fund is going to be bankrupt about 6 months later. So it's in dire trouble. The Surface Transportation Accelerator Grant, this is a new grant. However, to part of Matthew's question, it sort of consolidates a whole bunch of grants that already exists, right? So it's sort of, you know, one of those things that every new politician wants their name behind a new thing, except that a lot of it is old money and old programs that are just being renamed. So this is one of those type things. So the build grant and some of those other big grants for infrastructure get bundled into this. It authorizes 2.4 billion per year from the Highway Trust Fund, 25% of the funds for projects in rural areas. Paul, that's a new, very specific thing. You have to spend 25% in rural areas, which wasn't the case before. So it does mean out of that, you're going to get more funding for rural areas just because it's a specific set aside. You don't have to bid. It's a formula fund. It's not a competitive type fund. So 25% has to go to rural areas. But again, I think the states are going to administer that on behalf of rural areas. Now they're required to consult those rural areas before they spend the money in those rural areas. 25% for urban areas and 50% for local regional. So there you go again, right? So urban versus local, that becomes, the detail will come out in the wash as to how you decide what's an urban area versus a local area. I would have thought urban areas are all local areas, but you know, who knows? SS4A, they're keeping it, but they're reducing the amount available. So 3.75 billion over 5 years. It's 1.25 billion less than the current Infrastructure and Jobs Act has allocated. So the money is rolled over, but it's reduced. Again, you see the shift. So you're getting extra money and new money in some areas, but they're actually taking it away from other areas. So truck parking pilot, there's a new discretionary grant to expand the availability of truck parking. 120 million per year from the Highway Trust Fund. That's not a huge amount. I'm not sure how many millions it costs to build one truck parking spot, but I should imagine quite a few millions. So that's not a huge amount of money for truck parking, but it is a pilot program. So I guess they'll pick like 5 or 6 projects and give them the money and see how it works. I'm not sure why it needs to be a pilot program. Like building truck parking is something we do every day in the United States somewhere. So I'm not sure there's like a risk that we won't build it properly. But anyway, whatever, they're calling it a pilot. I guess they're calling it a pilot because there's not enough money to make it a big program. Peel funding increases. There's the number 18% over what's in the Infrastructure and Jobs Act over 5 years. So the net over 5 years will be an 18% increase. When you look at inflation, if it's running at 3% and you compound that over 5 years, you can see inflation is going to eat up a big chunk of that increase. So it's not a huge amount of PL increase. But the federal share increases, we'll have to see if the state of Virginia still gives us half of the local match. It does expand MPO authorities to allow something they call holistic planning. Not sure what that actually means. And to develop actionable local projects. Not sure what that means either. So wait and see. So the increase is probably not that impressive. It's probably just going to give us a slight bump to rectify the loss to inflation and maybe a tiny bit extra. RTPOs, they removed the allocation of $300,000 per region from the bill. The draft bill, the first draft, had it in, but when they did the markup, that has been deleted. So there's no longer an off the top $300,000 allocation per rural area. Some people are lobbying to get that put back in, but it's gone. Can we move to the next slide? There we go. The Senate bill, there's a whole lot of crickets. Absolutely nothing has happened. So those 4 committees all have to meet, consider a markup bill, and then negotiate between them what the final text of the Senate bill will look like. That takes time. When you've got 4 different committees all drafting, and then they have to all get together and come up with a joint one. I'm assuming the staff do all the running up and down to make them all work. Usually 24-year-old staff. And then they bring a final bill, which then will go to the Senate for a vote. That's going to take a while. There's an impending deadline. The IIJA expires on the 30th of September. So the assumption is that Congress is going to pass a short-term extension. I don't know, maybe for 6 months or something, while the Senate goes back and forth and tweaks that thing. Looking at the Senate calendar, it doesn't look like there's time between now and the midterm elections to actually do that. So I don't think the Senate is going to, this is just my opinion, I don't think the Senate is going to put together a markup bill before the midterms. It's likely to happen when they come back from the midterm elections. So I'm guessing like January, February, March, they'll work on their draft, and then it'll go to the Senate for a vote. And then, of course, you've got to have a reconciliation bill because unless it's exactly the same as the House bill, then the two have to do a reconciliation bill. So this is going to take time. Next one.
That's it.
Is that the last slide? Okay, great. So that's where we are now. So if you now want to ask questions, I can tell you what I know, which might not be everything. So what we know is those percentages that I've given you, but I wouldn't personally waste a lot of time debating it now, because if the Senate comes back and totally changes it, then we spend a lot of time talking for nothing. We should have another presentation once the Senate bill is out. Then we will know whether they're going to rip out more things or add more things in. But I think the total is somewhere around 285 billion, sorry, 580 to $590 billion. That's the kind of price range. Remember, the Infrastructure and Jobs Act was 1.2 trillion. So this is about half the size. It is a little bit of an increase of the rollover portion of the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. So all of the additional infrastructure money has been removed, and they've increased just the rollover portion from like 560 to 585 or some numbers like that. I'm just doing this off the top of my head, so don't quote me on the exact dollar value, but it's kind of what we would expect in a normal rollover bill. There's the big lot of special set aside. There are some set asides for like the DC Metro and for Amtrak and those, but again, not colossally huge money. It's what you would just normally expect to be rolled over.
Ian, I'll email you with regards to my question, and I'll email you what I think the answer is, and maybe you and John can clarify your thoughts. My only worry is if we lose all of the CRP funding and STBG doesn't go up enough to make up for that, could be considered a loss in funding. So we'll just want to figure that out.
They have done away with the program and they've not rolled it over. What they have rolled over is the money that was set aside for installing charging stations for electrical vehicles. That has been taken from a separate set aside item and put into a larger pot. So it's now part of, I think it's CMAQ. I think it's part of CMAQ. So they've taken that and shoved it in there. You can still apply for funding to do that, but it's not a separate funding stream. One thing I will say is that the amount that was allocated in the Infrastructure and Jobs Act to build electricity charging stations for electric vehicles wasn't utilized. Lots of it, I don't know what the exact percentage is, but a huge chunk of it was never ever allocated, never ever even applied for. So people have not been taking up the funding that was actually available. They've now ended the program, but changed the criteria for, I think it's CMAQ, to allow you to apply in CMAQ to do that work type of thing. I'm stand to correction under whether it's in CMAQ, but it's definitely in this bill where you can still apply for funding to do that, but people weren't taking up the money as much as expected.
So very quickly, John, you had a comment, and then Paul has a question.
Build upon what you said, is that portion of the funds was very restrictive on the place. So if there was a large amount of charging stations or within a certain vicinity, you wouldn't necessarily be eligible for those funds. They threw a lot to connect kind of the missing mile, but in a lot of cases, the demand wasn't there to put them in, and so it kind of sad.
Okay, Paul, you had a question?
So I just wanted to thank Ian for doing this presentation. This is very helpful. I just want to say, like, just to address the question that Matthew asked, based on kind of past experience, when there's a new transition bill, there's a bump initially, basically in kind of the funding levels. So I think the CMAQ and the STBG would initially go up. It may not keep pace with inflation, but the first couple of years there would be that bump. And I'm hopeful that that bump would offset the fact that maybe if the CRP goes away.
Yeah.
The other thing is kind of, I'll say it's in no one's best interest just for like projects that are fully funded. I'd certainly not be fully funded.
Right.
So I would think that whatever happens, that basically that issue would work itself out.
If the money was in the Infrastructure and Jobs Act and it was appropriated in the annual appropriations bill, then I think it's considered spent. So the annual appropriations bill allocated money for that purpose. I don't think they'll take it back.
It's just everything, what, 28, 30, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but it's I think it's allocated in the current. That's a good question. I'll find out.
So my concern, and I don't fully understand this, I'm just looking at what the dates say. IIJ was through FY 26, appropriations bill for FY 27, I think, kept it where it's at. That's where we're at, but there's nothing for FY 28, 29. So there may just be some
That's a
movement we
good
have to do next
question.
year with the new bill comes out. So
It's-
we'll figure it out.
In South Africa, we have a thing called a medium-term budget, which allocates future funding in a medium-term
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah.
We don't sort of have that here. We have a process of like these 5-year
Yeah.
goals that sort of give you theoretical money, and then they have to actually appropriate it once the tax receipts come in and they know how much money they've got. Although we're ballooning the federal debt so big, it doesn't seem like it matters as much anymore how much money we've got. I have a quick question myself,
You have
just
40
one.
trillion you can pay off, right?
Just one. VRE, you might not know the answer just off the top of your head, so if that's okay, if you don't, but there was some talk about putting charging stations at the VRE train stations. And I think Christine asked me if we were gonna apply, and we weren't gonna apply, so she said because VRE didn't want to double dip. And so because we weren't gonna apply, the assumption was that VRE is gonna apply. Do you know if there's any movement on that?
I have not heard anything specifically about that, but I can check.
If maybe just chat to Christine and Nick and see if anybody's worked on an application, because this bill, the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, is still valid until September. So this year's cycle of applying for that money, I don't know when the application dates are, but this might be the last year that we could actually get the money. So it would be a waste if we can still get it this year. It'll be harder next time.
I will move on to item number 7B. Oh, that's me. If you don't mind just pulling up the presentation, this is more of an FYI for everyone in the room. VDOT is looking at making changes to the revenue sharing program. As many of you know, this is the 50-50 sharing program that VDOT has, $5 million per year, $10 million per 2-year cycle that we can apply for. So just wanted to make everyone aware, if you're able to scroll down to maybe the 8th slide, I'll tell you when to stop. Stop right there. You want to just make this full screen a little bit. So really just, this is what the change would look like. Last round, you can see at the top what was applied for and what was given. And then if these changes were in place last round, what would have changed? So I guess this is more of a question of still uncertain how this affects us. But it could be a change as to how we apply for funding. I know most of the funding is applied for by staffers. So Paul, I don't know if you guys have had a chance to look at this. I know the city you guys applied for pre-paving projects in the past as well. Just wanted to more note this as an FYI in case anyone was unaware. So happy to take any comments or questions on it.
So I think it is good that we are talking about this, and I do understand the state's point, basically with trying to fully fund more projects. What I wish that they would do is that they would raise that limit of how much funding basically project could receive in revenue sharing, like in its life. When this program first came about, I think it was probably close to maybe 14 years or so ago, it was 10 million every year.
Yeah.
Now it's 10 million every 2 years. With inflation, 10 million every 2 years is not as much. And basically there's a cap basically that a project can only receive 10 million total in state money, which is not very much now. It used to be you could do like a major intersection project or something for, less than 10 million.
Yeah.
And now it's like, it's getting to the point where you can do like one turn lane or something like that. So I understand that the funding is tight. Maybe they can only do the 10 million every 2 years. But if they raise that cap on what the projects could receive, then some kind of larger projects could receive more meaningful amounts of money. And I'll say like not a mega project, but just maybe what I'll say more of like a median sized project today.
Yeah, I mean, Germania Point Connector is a great example.
Right.
You could use a lot more revenue sharing. It's really helped it. We had our courthouse road widening project years back. They got 15 or 17 million. And that's how that project was funded.
Is this the total amount across the whole state?
Yes, over the 2-year program.
So the one thing is, could FAMPO actually write a letter, maybe giving
Yep.
comments on this?
Where I was gonna go with it, if
Okay.
anybody is interested, I think, Paul, you make 2 great comments. I know, you've brought up in the past. Comment number 1 is really just increasing the cap. Right now, it's $5 million per year, maybe increasing it slightly to allow for more funding to be able to give it on a per project basis. And then item number 2 would be just increasing the total amount of funding available per year. Currently, there's about $100 million available per year. As you can see, there's 239 here over the 2-year cycle. So I believe that's mostly due to some of just the canceled projects or extra funding in the program. But I think those are the 2 items. 1, increasing the cap, and 2, increasing the funding available in the program. So this, Paul, might be the time to make that request, since they are looking at making changes. It is a somewhat new CTP board and new administration in place, so there could be some options there.
Do we know kind of the timing for when kind of the CTP would bring this up again?
I want to say, if you could scroll down on the presentation, actually, keep going. There we go. It looks like it's September, but I believe they're bringing stuff back at the August CTP meeting or the September CTP meeting, one of the 2, for just further discussion. So adoption might come then or might come at the meeting after.
This sounds to me like we should send if you want to send a letter, it should be sent in August. Because by September, they've got a resolution which is going to say what they propose.
Yeah. And I think really important thing here for us to note would be that this is the state's best funding program for the localities to put in money. Like Smart Scale, we don't put in 50%. Revenue sharing, we do. TAC, we don't put in 50%, but revenue sharing. So this would be a good program for them to get more localities. Well, I think
the point I'm making is that the policy committee meets in a week.
yes.
And if you wait until the one in September, it may be too late.
No, I think, Paul, have you guys drafted a letter before with language or what you'd like changed? Not for FAMPO, but for just.
We have not.
Correct.
Well, I take that back. We do a letter kind of like every kind of spring.
Yes, maybe that's fine.
For the 6-year plan, which
Yes.
we actually did have language on the revenue sharing program.
Okay, was that on both the points I made or just the?
It covered those. It may have covered some other points as well.
I guess, would you be able to send that along? Maybe we could start with that language. I'd be happy to work on drafting the language. If the TAC is amenable to agreeing that we would support sending a letter and then having, language be drafted, taken to policy committee. We just don't have language for today.
Just state your 2 rough points,
Yeah.
and then we'll ask if I may, we can ask if anybody else on the TAC has a comment.
So point number 1 would be that the current revenue sharing cap per year is $5 million. We would propose an increase to that cap of a certain amount. I think we need to figure that out, what we would propose, if we want to propose anything at all. And then point number 2 is the total amount of revenue sharing available per year is $100 million. We propose an increase of that as well.
So you're not saying where the money should come from, you're just saying give us more money.
Yes. Yeah. 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 I think having policy committee in August send a letter would be cool.
So does the TAC have any, sorry, Chairman, does the TAC have any comment? I don't have a particular opinion because I'm not involved in local revenue sharing projects directly. So for me, it's secondhand information. But does the TAC have any comments about asking for an increase to those 2 line items? For or against? I mean, my thing is going to be, you don't hint at where they should take the money from. They're likely to say, thanks for a nice letter. Anyway.
Yeah.
Because money is tight all over. I understand from some CGB members that the total amount allocated to the state of Virginia from federal highways has been reduced over the last year in various categories. So I'm assuming they're not going to have lots of money lying around to say, Sure, here's another 50 million a year.
Understandable. Well, we can, we could work on that for policy committee. I think we generally have tax support, writing a letter and taking it.
And let's just ask, do we have support for sending a letter with that request?
We can vote. I commented because I heard comments on it, so.
We'll just ask for a show of
Yeah,
hands. and we
does
know.
anybody, does there show of hands for those who would support writing a letter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's, you know,
So I just,
that role.
I actually,
That I need next year.
so I actually found the letter that we sent.
Okay.
I just kind of sent it to kind of a group, but yeah, I was just gonna look. I'm pretty sure the revenue sharing would want from that.
Well, if Matthew and Paul want to just review
Yeah.
language, we need it by Wednesday.
Yeah,
So I was going off, he already has language somewhat written, so we can build off of that.
yeah, I can just read what basically. As we request more funding for the Commonwealth of Virginia's revenue sharing program was very competitive during this past cycle, and many worthy projects statewide were not able to get the full amount of requested funding. We also request that the funding cap of $10 million project be increased and indexed to inflation to stabilize the increase this funding source going forward. Additionally, we request that the Commonwealth of Virginia change the revenue sharing funding cycle back to the same cycle as the TAP program for the next round, so that both would be on the same cycle. So in addition just to the funding and just the cap going up, they're shifting the cycle to match TAP, which would be basically doing another FY 29-30 if that were to happen, and then indexing the amount of funding to inflation. Even not to keep it like 100 million forever or 10 million forever.
Alright, is TAC generally supportive of that, along with language of trying to increase just overall funding of the TAC program? Okay. Alright, well, Paul, we can work on some language, work with you on that, and get it over to you by Wednesday.
Sounds good.
Alright, thank you. Alright, we'll move on to item number 7C, 2055 CLRP update.
Good morning, everybody. I'm not in suit right now, but right now we have just received our second deadline for projects that require modeling to be included in the transformative and regional impact needs items. So just to make sure that everything is clear to the TAC as we move forward through our review and scoring process, I wanted to just give you an update. We are reviewing projects right now for regional significance. This is kind of an important category. And I'm going to walk you through our kind of concepts and definitions as we're using it to move forward to determine whether or not to have the whether or not projects qualify for its regional significance to be included in the CLRP. That doesn't necessarily mean it's not a critical and necessary item for the jurisdiction. It's just that it would not rise to that other jurisdictions need to review the project going forward. Next slide. So again, regionally significant projects are a facility that serves regional transportation needs. At a minimum, traditionally the Federal Highways considers this to be a principal arterial and fixed guideway transit projects. Previously, in other iterations, we've dropped regional needs all the way down to local collectors. We are going to kind of elevate that to at least minor arterials and major collectors for some of this project, at least for the initial rounds. So we're trying to keep that expanded without going too far into the weeds of exploring different ones. And the reason why we're kind of constraining our regional significance list is that previous rounds, the air quality analysis was much more inclusive of basically have to almost model as much as you can. We don't have that control, so it allows us to kind of focus on the main arterials and major collectors for this process. Next slide.
John, before you carry on, how many projects have you received so far?
So we've already received about 425 projects as our project list. So yes, we have a lot. So that's
and before you carry on even further, you're still expecting some from the city and other which you don't yet have?
Yeah, correct. So we still have that, and keep in mind we still have our deadline in a couple of weeks coming up. So that the likelihood of projects increasing is very likely. So yes, we are at that level.
So you're probably going to get to 450 projects that have been submitted.
Yes, that is the expectation. It is going to be a lot of projects. So, that's the reason why we're looking at the regional significance and screening. So we're going to use that as a first round of, do we send it directly back to the TAC, so that the way that regional significance is defined is any project that the region deems significant. So it's going to come back to y'all. But that's going to be our process as far as scoring it. So if it is a road that's connecting two small local connectors or minor connectors, we're probably going to bump that out for regional significance, depending on whether or not it's making connections into, say, a major arterial, say like Route 3, US 17, Route 1. We're going to be looking at that. But we've also begun our modeling process. So VDOT's modeling and planning division has already received our final list of projects. As of this morning, we gave notice that these are the projects that we're moving with. For this modeling exercise, it's going to be determining safety benefit projects only. So I want to keep that clear. So it's not every single project that might be a new roadway or intersection, or anything that might not be regionally significant wouldn't be included in the modeling exercise, but it's going to be very specific on a few projects. One of the items that we were in discussion with transportation modeling is that we are removing all competing projects. So if you submitted a project that would be eligible for this modeling exercise, it would not be modeled alongside other projects. However, other projects that are still in our long-range plan that are not competing will be included in the model runs. So the best case example for this would be the Harrison Road interchange. We are assuming that the Harrison Road widening projects, also within the CLRP, are going to be included in that. So we would not be creating an artificial model where all other supporting network improvements would be excluded, but we won't be modeling every single possible river crossing option altogether. So we wouldn't have a scenario where we have 8 river crossings trying to determine which one. So there's a bit of efficiency that we're trying to gain with that, just so that we're not creating model scenarios that are unrealistic, where we have a 4-lane, intersection or bridge, but all the rest of the network is 2 lanes or less.
So we're only modeling a small number of projects where we need the model run to determine the safety score.
Yes, correct.
We don't need it for the safety score. We're not doing the modeling, except right at the end, once we've got the approved list of projects, VDOT will code them into the model, the full list. And we will be able to get model runs right at the end of the impacts of that set of projects. But we're not modeling all of the projects. We don't have the capacity, and VDOT doesn't have the capacity. So that's what we're doing.
Well, we're on the topic of modeling, John. Did you and Ian discuss the issue at the courthouse road interchange?
So we've talked with VDOT's modeling folks, and at this point in time, they are not entertaining any updates to the model as far as what they are doing. Changes. We've actually been reviewing elements in the model, and for this model run, they are making corrections. They find them and need them and noting it, but they won't redo the model to change the network at this point. But it's all exercise for model run.
But when we have the full CLR list approved by the policy committee, they would be required to fix any
Well,
in the network,
yeah.
or am I wrong?
initial discussions is saying no. They will not go, they will add the new projects, but they're not going to do a full review and revision of the existing network until the next time that our model is requiring a major update. So they're still set. Now, what we're doing, and this is more traditional practice in previous runs, is that we identify and note a deficiency or change or something that is not correct in the model. They're going to make that note, so it'll be in the list notes, so that anybody who does anything backwards will know what corrections they need to make, but they're not going to change the base model for that until the next time around. And it kind of just shows the importance of, you got to get the model right as right as you can the first time around. But we've had those discussions, but we've made them because we found other things as we've gone through modeling. So it's like, okay, you have this weird little quirk where it should be a 3-lane facility, and then it necks down for a very small segment that's 1 lane, and then back to 3 lanes. Like, in theory, it's just shoving all those cars, but that one little segment will have a bonkers VC ratio. as long as you are aware of them or know it, then we can address that, but it's also question is it going to cause major challenges for issues with the model as a whole? So if like a major roadway isn't connecting right to an existing segment, they're like, okay, we can fix that, but it
That is-
really has to be something that's affecting the entire model versus something that is more of a localized effect model.
Okay, I mean, yeah, that's an odd way that they're gonna do it, but I just asked that any map we do states that the courthouse grant change is inaccurate.
Well, we went back and looked at it, and even with that, so it's the new interchange where it does have, if that segment, it has a small segment where it is necking down. And we've seen that in a couple other areas. There's actually another place on 95 that we've identified that
I
issue.
think there's
And
several.
again, it's also curving onto the road, that the two-lane road that comes up to Route 1 from courthouse has too much lane capacity.
Yeah.
Now-
And the functional classification is also incorrect.
Yes, but it's also like, that's going to impact the model localized. But in general, if you're having trips between TASs that are extended, as a whole, that area is still functioning more or less. It still has the same number of lanes and through lanes as exists now. It's just saying which road is it? That's the question. We have a couple of other little small little points that we are identifying through this analysis that, okay, we can make tweaks here and there, but it's going to be something that VDOT's noting them, and we can do that amendment and changes the next time we have a major refresh of the model.
Okay, but you guys did update the land use data, however.
Yes, we are using the updated land use data. Actually, I should do that. Not what we're doing that we've been asking localities to review this last month. For these model runs, we're still using the approved land use data as of July 2025.
Okay, but the final model run will include the new land use
The
data.
LRTP, post LRP, yes. Scoring, we're using the existing. A little bit different, but yes. Trying to remember, so these models are quite intensive. We're going to be getting this data as it becomes available for VDOT. We're expecting our new build in 1 or 2 projects, and maybe this week, but they're basically going to be coming in one project at a time up through August 21st. So we're going to be reviewing them as they come in for this item. So, next slide. So just again, we're on a very constrained timeline. We've done past and present here. We started our screening for significance and provided details for the transportation run link folks. We have our final application deadline of August 14th. And we're looking to have the scoring available on September 9th. And if you walk that back with information needed for this committee, it's about 2 weeks. We need to get something to the policy committee to open public comment on that list by September 1st for November adoption.
If I can just comment on this timeline, we do not have wiggle room in the timeline for the CLRP. For the long range plan adoption, we've got time till like April something. There's no rush there. But we have a very tight deadline for the CLRP because the state, I'm not sure if I've told you this, but I'm just going to say it now. The state has a new STIP, but Federal Highway is refusing to approve the STIP until such time as all MPOs in Virginia have their CLRP.
We've had other impacts with the link lane.
Hang on, let me just finish. Until all the CLRPs are current and updated to the current status. So there are 5 MPOs in Virginia where their CLRP is going to require an update between now and the end of the year. So ours is currently valid until the end of September. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Let me take that back. Ours is currently valid. We do have to adopt a new one by December to remain current. And this new STIP is not going to be approved by Federal Highways until the 5 MPOs whose CLRPs will not be current in the last 3 months of the year have been updated. So these 5 MPOs will prevent the state getting its STIP approved because these things are linked for some reason that is complicated. So we have to meet that deadline. We cannot get past the November policy committee meeting without them voting to adopt a CLRP, even if we have to call special meetings. So please don't miss the deadlines that John is asking for from now until September, because we don't have that luxury of being able to just add an extra month. For the CLRP text and all the maps and the final model runs and all that, we've got plenty of time. But for the CLRP list of projects, we don't have time. So I'm kind of looking at the city about your list of projects. Please, please, please get that final list in. The others, we've got your preliminary lists. For the city, we don't yet have a full preliminary list. So please, if you can focus on that, because we cannot delay it. We will either leave your projects out or we'll take a crayon and make the projects up ourselves, but we cannot miss that deadline.
So the date is August 14th. So that is when the final project list is due by. So please get anything and everything into you all, into John and Ian and the rest of the staff by then. John, maybe you all could send out just a reminder with the spreadsheet, just so everyone has it at the top of their inbox after the TAC meeting.
And we need the termini of each project, and we need a cost estimate for each project, and we need the description of each project, et cetera, et cetera.
Paul?
So I just want to say that the county is committed to making the deadline. I just had a couple comments that we are working on some of the cost estimates, particularly with the transit. I know we're going to meet with Fred and here to see if talk about some of the bus costs. Some of the other highway costs, the cost could still change. I think we're very close to what our final project list is. So I don't anticipate that we're going to have like new projects or different projects on the 14th. One question I had, I don't want to create any additional work, but we have been including some of these existing 6-year plan projects that are completed, but they're not financially closed out. Example would be like that Route 606 widening in Thornburg. The project is completed, but it's still active, like in the 6-year plan. Should we be doing that, or can we take that off of our list?
Take that off the list. One part of this process that I'm doing is taking our recently approved, actually the 24 and 27 tip, as well as the 27 FY 2030 tip. And again, go back to other thing is those are going to be all fire projects. They're going straight into the approved list. And we're moving forward with that. So that's the issue. Double check my list when I come back out with in September to make sure that any of the projects that are closed out but still need to be included for various reasons are included, and we can move forward with that. But yes, I am basically taking our tip list and taking the old STIP list, and I say old list 24, 27, and those are going to be moved forward as well as your large scale application. They are being moved forward in the draft.
There's a little wrinkle there. The funding that we've asked everybody to give us is for 2027 onwards. Some of those projects will have been funded with old money. So we must be careful about when we include them that we don't take new money to pay for them. And that's a complicated wrinkle, which we'll have to work out in the next month.
That's the reason why I'm taking the newest tip to make sure, but also any of the old tip that I know that's an older project that's moving forward. The 27 is the cutoff point, but I just have to make sure that anything.
If we, what I'm saying is that if we add a project back in that is essentially complete, but it still needs to be reflected, we need to add the dollar value that came in the past and not steal money from the new CLRP to pay for it, if you know what I mean. Because otherwise what it's going to do is going to remove one of your existing projects out of the CLRP because we can't fund it. So what we don't want to do is mix up old money and new money, but we can do that if we make a note of those projects that are mostly closed out but still need to be in the thing. just make a note of the dollar value because we're gonna take old money to pay for those, not new.
So for example, like the tip update that we just had for the express lanes, FY26 funds, that's not moving forward the existing project because we're looking at 27, but I'm using the FY24-27 tip, FY27-30 tip, because I'm looking at the FY27. So even if a project's not advancing the old tip to the new tip, if it's caught in 27, try to catch it.
Our goal is to get as many of your projects into the CRP as we can, provided we can show where the money's coming from. Sorry, John, for the big.
Okay, John, just FYI, that brings up some good comments and questions on my side about our money that I gave you and then the project list I gave you. So I'll talk to you offline about that. All right, any further on this presentation? Seems like we're all good to go.
Is that the last
Sounds
one?
good. Yeah.
Last
Right.
All right, we'll move on to item number 7D, review of 2055 LRTP goals and objectives chapter, public involvement report.
This is the LRTP 2055 chapter progress review. There are two chapters that we're updating you on. Chapter 2, the goals and objectives, which is ready for review, and Appendix D, public involvement report. Objectives, all of the content is complete. The goals and objectives and language was already adopted in or May after the So what we're looking for now is feedback on the revision. Going to the chapter description, we've added the chapter introduction, which provides context for the goals and objectives. And we've also given a keyword to each of the goals that summarizes every goal to one page from that. Public involvement. It details 3 public engagement opportunities and outreach event that is going to be that is the transportation goals and survey that we conducted in that is going to be the CLRP and the outreach and publication that we do for when the LRTP as a whole goes out for a public. We completed the introduction and the survey section. The public involvement report provides background and lists outreach activities for it. Our next steps for the public involvement report are waiting for the completion of the CLRP and LRP public engagement process. So we can expect the CLRP section to be completed around October and November, and the LRTP section. So we are looking back on the additions to the goals and objectives chapter. Again, the goals and objectives themselves cannot be adopted. The public involvement report is currently in progress. So drafts of both of the chapters are in your packet agenda, and you can send feedback to UC.time@HW.
When are you looking for feedback by? Want to just say like in the next month, prior to the next TAC meeting, maybe?
Yeah, right.
Before the next tech meeting would be great.
So before September. Is that?
14th, I believe it is.
Yeah, okay. It was a messy one. Okay, so please send any feedback that you all may have. Please take a look and send feedback by September 14th. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item number 7E, resolution 2707 on federal amendments for truck sizing and weight limits.
So, this is a presentation that was made to the policy committee at their request. So I'm sort of the passenger in this particular process. I'm not going to go through all of the materials, but just quickly flip through these. The basic idea is there's a push to allow bigger trucks on the roads, and then there's a pushback to say, no, that's going to cost us as the taxpayers a lot of money because the truck company or the truck driver or the people who own the rig or the people who own the trailer are not going to pay extra to upgrade the road. So that's the pushback, is to say, fine, but who's going to pay for all the additional maintenance costs? Next slide. So there's a national grassroots organization called the Coalition Against Bigger Trucks. Yeah, people in all 50 states are joining this push, and it's to say, no, we would rather see other things developed to move more freight, not bigger trucks. Next slide. And here's just some of the metrics of the proposed configurations. You're going to see the proposal to have trucks with 3 trailers, which makes them larger. Also, the weight of the various trucks options are going to increase if those proposals are approved. You saw in the new draft bill that they're allowing a pilot project, which does also make me nervous because let's say Tennessee allows the heavier trucks. What happens when the truck gets to the border and crosses into a different state? It's all very messy. But anyway, next slide. So who wants bigger trucks? A few large trucking companies and some shipping companies led by the Americans for Modern Transportation and Shippers Coalition. The trucking industry is divided on whether they want it or not. Next slide. Who opposes it? They're all the organizations that oppose it. National Association of Counties, the League of Cities, as you would expect, because those are the people who might end up having to find the money to pay for more maintenance, or the state TODs might have to end up finding more money to pay for the maintenance. Next slide. The US DOT recommended no changes in the size. They talk about higher crash rates, increased pavement damage and bridge damage, so on and so on and so on. Next slide. Just the current backlogs and maintenance needed for bridges is already there. Next slide. So this House bill has actually added this proposal to the new reauthorization bill with an opt-in clause. So the state has to opt in to have it, but they have gone ahead and put it in there. Next slide. The Senate may remove it, right? We don't know yet what's going to happen. There's just some of the numbers of the crashes and the bridges and what condition they're in and all that kind of thing. Next slide. Okay, I think that's the end. So this coalition is asking MPOs and localities and states to send a resolution supporting blocking the larger trucks approval. And the resolution, are we able to pull that up? It's on the agenda, I believe. So this resolution is drafted by the gentleman that made the presentation. So we've just put it on the FAMPO letterhead, and it's going back to the policy committee. The policy committee hasn't expressed their view yet. They haven't said, yes, we want to support the resolution, or no, we don't want to support the resolution. But we were just asked to draft it for their consideration. So if anybody has any comments, happy to hear those.
So Ian, I'll just start very quickly. A question. Everybody in this room, except for Kathy, does not maintain the roads. Our counties do not pay taxes to maintain the roads.
The team maintains the roads.
That's true. Yes, the local roads. But for everyone else, I guess, would be my point. It doesn't really affect us the way that VDOT would.
The question becomes the leader that require geometric design for the drivers. I mean, radiuses and. Yes.
So that would, each different project would have a different design. You know, Are updating, you know, as they change, I think that some of the concern that was voiced in the presentation, there was just the weight and infrastructure, but it's also, other things. Change. Will affect other realm. There's a lot of things that is.
I guess, is there a motion in favor or any further discussion on this?
But basically, the policy committee hasn't made up their minds, so if you're not going to give advice, now would be your chance. Like, yes, we're against this, we don't care, we're in favor of it, whatever. Now's kind of your chance to say, we recommend something or we don't. I mean, I'm personally not in favor of these massive trucks. I think that in the US, we've shifted from moving so much of our freight on rail to moving much more on the roadway. And, you know, your local van delivering your Amazon box is one thing, but this colossal truck that we're now enlarging, and if you look at I-95 today, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, go up to Woodbridge, stand on a bridge over I-95 and just look. It's truck after truck after truck after truck. Now you make them all bigger and heavier, and something runs in front of that truck and they have to brake. Or alternatively, you start getting those grooves in the asphalt from the heavier weight. I think it's not a great idea. I think we should try to push for more rail for the very heavy stuff, the very big stuff, and move smaller stuff on the roadways.
But by looking at those things, you could tell that they are offsetting the weight by adding more axle, which is reduces.
If they do that, yes. Yes, you can reduce the wear if you have any more axles and wheels, that kind of thing. I get it.
I was just gonna say with the safety concern with additional crashes, like with, if you're in a crash with a bigger vehicle, you're gonna, chances of surviving would go down.
It takes longer to stop it, the heavier it is, or the bigger it is. Like try to stop a train, you just can't. So the bigger they get, the longer distance they need to stop.
So the question that I have is basically, are the existing bridges for the primaries in the US generally built to basically accommodate like a 91,000 pound vehicle?
So it's back to, well, it's two different things. The one thing is the per axle weight, but the other thing is the total weight on the bridge at any one time, which is a question I can't answer. That's an engineering question. But in terms of the per axle weight, provided the per axle weight doesn't exceed US standards, then the roadway would be okay. But if you have the total tonnage on the bridge go up, that's an engineering question I can't answer.
The way we handle these things, heavyweight overload vehicles, send it to our consultant to evaluate the bridge itself to see if it allows these kind of trucks to go over existing. How we handle those things usually, but most of the time they allow it based on the number of axles and these spread the weight.
But I mean, but if the total truck, because the truck's going to be usually all on the bridge at the same time, we're going to have a portion of the truck on the bridge. He's asking the question about, we have 10 of these things on a bridge at the same time. Does that affect the bridge?
The bridge is designed to handle, like, you take a foot at a time when you design the bridge, the load.
Okay. So there's no cumulative impact. Okay.
Is it generally understood that this proposal would, and I don't know the answer, but it sounds like maybe there's conflicting thoughts. Generally speaking, is road maintenance, bridge maintenance going to become more frequent because of this? I mean, are you gonna have to touch a road to do some work on it more frequently than you currently have to because of this proposal?
This is will show up in the annual inspection. Some of the bridges are biannual, some of them are annual. And the report will tell you, you know, what's needed to be done with, you know, whether it's superstructure or substructure, all that stuff, the conditions of the deck, all included in those.
So that's true. That doesn't answer your question, but it is true. The question is, the answer is I don't know.
Right.
So I would be looking to somebody with more information to tell me. These folks who've signed on to this thing say, yes, it will. I don't know. Does VDOT Engineering have any other comment other than what Hassan said, which is true? Hassan's not wrong. It's just the question is whether there'll be more maintenance, and I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, put another way, you know, maybe for every 10 feet of road, right, currently you have to maintain that based on all current standards. Once a year, there's a financial investment of whatever to maintain that 10 feet of road. Because of this, is it now twice a year because there's extra load, or is it now 1.5 times a year as opposed to once a year for that same 10 feet of road because of this? That's what I'm trying to wrap my head around. Because if it's understood generally that it's going to be more expensive to maintain our roads because you are doing them more frequently because of the extra wear and tear, if that is a given and we all agree on, then we're talking about, do we agree that this is basically a tax increase or a shifting of funds from one pot to another in the future, inevitably, because you're going to create a crisis scenario of worn down roads that need more frequent maintenance, and you're not going to be able to not fund that in the future, right? So you're going to have to take money from somewhere else, whether it's additional taxes or from some other program, sort of like what you see happening with transit being kind of gutted versus, you know, roads and stuff now. So is this just further perpetuating that in the future is what I'm kind of asking.
So to take a lead from what Kathy just said, the more wheels move on the road, the more the wear and tear. So even if the weight on each wheel doesn't go up, the net total number of wheels, however, what it doesn't automatically guarantee is that there are going to be more trucks. So let's say it might be possible to take 2 trucks worth of load and put it in 1 truck because it's a bigger truck. It's a more complicated data analysis because that you can't do on the fly.
Right.
Because you have to know whether this is going to be a net increase in the number of wheels on the road or not, and whether the weight on any one wheel is going to go up or not.
Your information now is based on the number of wheels at the weights that are currently allowed. If you allow these increases on the same number of wheels, you probably not data to determine, maybe there is, I don't know, if there's data to determine whether or not that is actually more tear.
If the weight per wheel goes up, definitely more wear and tear. I just don't know the answer to that question. These people are saying yes.
I mean, I'm not professing any expert nature of information here, but from a general common sense point of view, it seems like it's going to be more expensive to maintain roads under what's being proposed, whether it's because frequency of maintenance changes, more paving, whatever the case may be. So I would be personally against that and in favor of supporting this because I feel like that is basically just going to be what's an unfunded mandate in the future that's going to have to take from something else. That's how I view this. You might not see the impacts today, and people might be celebrating it because you're allowing commerce at a higher rate now, but there will be repercussions for that at some point. So that's my sort of, sorry, I had to walk through that with everybody. I apologize. But but viewing it from without technical expertise, but just from a simple common sense standpoint, it seems like it's going to make roads more expensive to maintain. And if forgetting my personal views on the safety and driving 95 and other stuff, just to make a costly program.
That's why the TAC is here to do this.
So Paul,
Can we go back to slide 9 of the presentation? So Rodney kind of brought this up to me as we were talking, but with basically that third bullet point, basically have that like 841 bridges in basically Virginia, the estimate is 841 bridges would have to be basically replaced as a result of this policy. I'll say if even a fraction of that is true, that's a tremendous amount of money. So
Yeah.
I completely agree with what kind of Phil said, and I'm against this.
Alright. Well, happy to take this is the resolution action on the agenda, so happy to take a motion if there's.
A motion to approve.
Alright, do I have a second? I have a second. Alright, any further discussion? Alright, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Alright, motion carries. Dan has disappeared on us, but moving on to staff reports. Smart Scale and CMAC SWDCR.
I can at least give a quick update on the CMAC portion. So attached in the agenda, we're going to be providing the full list to everybody once we have the amended items approved. But if you want to jump down, we've received a couple of comments from Vidal Spot, Virginia, Eugene 54. The BCR Trail Bridge, we're going to be updating the UPC as a temporary UPC now, but it will receive a permanent UPC of 129692. 56 Pennsylvania Route 1 at Massaponics. We've also received a permanent UPC on that one, so it would be 130104. And then on number 67 Route 217 widening to the Shannon Airport, we noticed that it was noted that there's an error with PC number. It is going to be 119110, where we have a typo on that item. But there's any other small little administrative changes that you note, or as we need that, even temporary UPCs for existing projects are coming online, we will add those, and so that you will have a kind of a full and complete CMAC spreadsheet, so that I know y'all use this for different applications and other material for your own jurisdiction. So we'll maintain a updated one once it's approved by the policy committee, but we wanted to show you what we are calling the primary list for everybody to see.
So this is with the updates for the earlier agenda item, which will be approved by the policy committee later on in August. Right. Anything else anybody wants to note on this? Just to note, we may or may not be talking about CMAC SMG for at least another year. So we'll see if they make changes to the infrastructure bill that necessitates anything. But assuming nothing happens there, we will not talk about this till next about a year from now. We'll have a call for projects. All right, Ian, did you want to touch on anything under staff reports for smart scale submissions?
So nothing new to add. Carrie texted me just half an hour ago to say she finally has all the materials. 3 projects have already been submitted. She's currently sitting with her laptop and updating those last final materials. Then she's going to submit once everybody's happy. So I think we're on schedule to submit the other 5 projects during the day today. She might reach out to one of you to just check your project to make sure before she presses the red button. So just keep close to your email to see if there's anything you need to approve. But I think those are done. Then the other thing in terms of the bylaws, what I'm proposing, and I've been thinking about this for a long time and have not brought a formal project. I'm proposing that we just slightly update the TAC bylaws. There's nothing wrong with them, but just there's some points where they're not completely clear. Like the policy committee rotates their office bearers on the 1st of July. The TAC bylaws are a bit older, and it talks about voting for your new office bearers at the annual meeting. We don't have an annual meeting. There's no such thing as an annual meeting for the TAC. And so language like that is just vague, because then it leaves you, we had that awkward situation where I didn't know who should chair the special meeting after the official TAC meeting, because the language in the bylaws don't exactly tell me what to do. So we went with Matthew chairing it, which was fine. But I'd just like to tighten up the language a little bit. Also, whether or not people online count towards the quorum, I just like to be specific rather than leave it vague. So I propose just making some of these minor tweaks and bringing it back to you in future. You can then decide whether or not you like the tweaks.
Yep. So why don't you bring that back with TAC support, assuming there is some at the next TAC meeting. So does Ian have the support to bring that back at the next TAC meeting? those minor bylaw changes.
It's not gonna change
Show of hands.
the meaning of anything, it's just gonna be a little bit of like tweaking. And of course, if you don't like them, you can say.
Okay, so we'll have that for further discussion, and starting the bylaw change process at the next TAC meeting in September. Anything else?
I think we're good unless somebody else has a.
So I just had a quick question with basically the CLRP process. I forgot to ask this, but will there be like a subcommittee for that or kind of special meetings for the CLRP, or is the expectation that will all be done within the TAC?
So we are going to have to get a draft list for the next TAC meeting.
Right.
So fingers crossed, we will not need to have a special committee unless that the TAC wants to explore themselves. So if we're sitting in a position where we have a draft list and we can do any amendments to that draft list before going to public comment, then we do not have a need of a special committee meeting in September. If there is something that you wish to, during the public comment, we're still accepting changes and TAC feedback there. So you will have another opportunity to make amendments or changes for the October meeting to make recommendations for a change list for the policy committee eventually at the November. So we kind of have October to make some amendments and changes while that list is out to public comment. We are planning to provide every single list, every single project submitted to be in the CLRP list. However, that means we're going to have a lot of needs items, and with our current process, we're expecting that the TAC, with how we develop the methodology and process, to be able to elevate needs list items to the CLRP and vice versa throughout the process, and to be able to do that basically every single year need is viewed to do so. So one, we're going to develop our constraints list for the September meeting. We're going to make sure that y'all have it. If y'all choose to have a special meeting, that's within y'all's purview. We'll support that, as well as any amendments and changes to that list going into October before the adoption in November. Because we can make changes to elevate or promote or demote or relegate projects to and from the needs list. So going to be specific on that, but y'all will have multiple bites of the apple.
Can I make a suggestion? Just like thinking through this right now. So let's produce the draft CLRP list and a draft needs list, both for the September TAC meeting. The TAC can then recommend the CLRP list for public comment. I mean, I'm happy to put the needs list out for public comment, then I see. And then what we can then do at the October TAC, do tweaks and changes. So the TAC then has the whole month to review the list, to think about it, to send questions to John, etc. Then we can make agreed changes at the October meeting long before the policy committee has to vote on it. If at the October meeting you can't work it all out in the meeting, we can then schedule later in October as a special meeting to work on the changes.
Every single project that could be included in the CR is listed somewhere for public comment, including if it's a needs list. So that's just so that we're not populating brand new projects outside of public comment.
The point I'm making though is if we put the needs list out for public comment as well, then if we want to swap a project from the needs list to the CLRP, the public's already commenting on it. So there's no need to have a second public comment period because we've already given them both lists.
Okay, so Paul, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Updates from agencies and localities. Does anybody have anything they wish to note, discuss, comment, question?
Omni-Ride, 40th birthday. Happy birthday, Omni-Ride. That's what I'm gonna say.
Omni-Ride. When is the what if
This is our 40th anniversary year right now. This
Oh.
year. All right. So we are celebrating.
Oh yeah, well congratulations.
We've got cool buses with eighties themes rolling around with cassette. Anybody know what cassette tape is? Who remembers cassette tapes? Does anybody remember putting your boombox in front of your TV to try to record that song off MTV or off of the radio? Yeah, but anyway,
When-
celebrating that eighties sorts of stuff going on. Variety of events, open houses. Yeah, 40 years, right?
When I was in my senior year in high school, Simon came out with a Graceland album. I got my copy on a cassette tape.
There you go.
And I'll just note from the staffer side, we have, could be today or tomorrow, completing our Brea Church Road reconstruction project. So that road should be reopening soon.
Brook
So
Road?
Brea Church.
Berea
Revenue,
Church.
it was a revenue sharing
I
project.
beg your pardon.
Yep. And then we are starting officially our safety action plan and bike ped plan upcoming in the next couple months here. So we have a federal approval, so we're just getting that going now.
One other thing which I probably should have said, and I didn't, the 2024 SS4A grant that we were allocated was finally signed like a week or 2 weeks ago. So it mostly covers Spotsylvania projects. So Paul, we'll be working with you, and we've got to choose and appoint a consultant to do the work. But because of the new administration, they delayed a lot of approvals, and ours was one of those that got delayed. They sent it back for all sorts of language changes, which didn't have any material impact on the project. But of course, it's the same amount of money and inflation. So we hope we can still do everything that's in there for the price that's agreed. But we can move ahead, and we will reach out also about the local portion that the local match on the project. But it's been approved now and signed and executed. So we now have the permission to proceed.
I'll just say that we're ready to pay, so if you want to send it.
Yeah, I'll send you an invoice.
Let's quote that and put that on the wall. Paul is ready to pay.
Guess the match.
All right, well, unless there's any further comments or discussion, I will adjourn the
And
meeting.
thanks to everybody for all the work, support, and help on the small scale projects. Thanks to VDOT especially, and to the localities for doing lots of little tasks and getting your consultant teams together. We appreciate it. We will be submitting on time. We do think we've got good projects and all of the stuff we need for submission. So thank you to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah, Bill,
Adjourn.
Rodney and I wanted to talk to you about this.